The chamber was filled with silence when the humans arrived. Every alien eye turned toward the tall doors as they opened, and the sound of footsteps echoed across the polished floor. The steps belonged to a single man, dressed in a plain black suit, his hands empty, his face calm, his eyes steady. The air was heavy with tension, and whispers spread through the hall like a wave of shadows. Alien leaders from across the galaxy leaned closer to one another, their voices low, their tones sharp, their words filled with scorn and curiosity. The Galactic Council had accused humanity of being too dangerous to exist, too reckless to share the stars. They had gathered here to decide the fate of an entire species, and in their minds the decision was already clear. They only waited for proof that humans were fragile, unarmed, and powerless without their strange machines and technology, proof that they were nothing more than a primitive threat, one that could be broken before it grew into something greater. The man who entered the chamber was called a diplomat, but he carried no tools of peace, no translator device, no weapons of defense, no armor of protection, only his hands, his voice, and the weight of countless generations who had struggled to survive on a hostile world. He walked to the center of the chamber, the circle of alien leaders staring down from their high seats, their eyes glowing, their fangs sharp, their scales and feathers shimmering under the great lights. Some leaned forward, with hunger in their gaze, others with cold disdain. The silence deepened, then broke with laughter, a sharp, cruel sound. One of the alien commanders hissed, his long neck stretching forward, his words dripping with mockery. "See him. He is alone. He carries nothing. He is nothing." Another alien chuckled, his heavy armor rattling as he spoke. Humans claim strength. Yet look at him, soft skin, weak frame, no claws, no fangs, not even a tail for balance. They send this fragile thing to stand before us, and they call it a representative of their kind. The human did not answer. His eyes did not shift. His breathing was calm, steady, like someone who had stood before storms and fire before. He did not need to explain himself. Not yet. The chamber was still alive with whispers. Every alien certain that this day would end with humiliation. Every alien believing that humans were nothing special, that they were creatures who only survived by chance, by tools, by luck. Suspense grew as the council signaled for the trials to begin. These trials were not of words, but of demonstration. They would show the galaxy that humans had no true strength, that without steel or fire they were powerless. And once the galaxy saw this truth, the council would declare humans too dangerous and too weak, a contradiction that could not be allowed to spread among the stars. The council would then vote for humanity to be contained, isolated, or perhaps erased. The human diplomat raised his eyes slowly. His gaze moved across the circle of alien leaders. Some shifted uncomfortably under that simple look, others sneered with pride, but none could deny there was something unsettling in the stillness of the man, in the silence of his steps, in the weight of his presence. It was as if he carried more than himself, as if unseen shadows of human history stood with him, the long line of survival carved into his very being. The alien judge leaned forward, his body vast and armored, his mandibles clicking as his voice cut through the air, harsh and commanding. "Human, you have been summoned to face judgment. Your species is young and reckless. Your kind fights too easily, adapts too quickly, destroys too completely. The galaxy cannot allow your nature to spread unchecked." The human remained still, his hands at his sides, his shoulders square, his eyes steady on the towering figure above him. The judge's voice grew sharper. "Today, we test you. We strip you of your toys, your tools, your machines. Today you will show us what a human truly is without weapons, without power, without the crutches of your fragile kind." The council leaned closer, anticipation rippling through their ranks. They expected fear. They expected shaking hands. They expected desperate excuses. They expected failure. The chamber was hungry for weakness, hungry for proof of human fragility. But the man did not tremble. His voice rose at last, calm and steady, stronger than the silence. "We have no weapons here. We carry no steel or fire. Yet we are not nothing." He paused, and his words carried into the far corners of the vast hall. Humanity is more than the tools we make, more than the machines we build. Humanity itself is the weapon. Whispers rippled through the council. Some laughed. Others frowned. But the man's voice had cut through the noise, leaving behind an echo that lingered longer than any alien expected. The judge sneered, the sound like grinding stone, his many eyes narrowing. Empty words, nothing more. He raised one great clawed hand and pointed toward the human, his voice ringing like thunder. Then show us, human without weapons, what are you? The chamber fell into silence again, a silence heavy and suffocating. Every alien leaned forward, waiting, expecting, hungering to see the truth, and the man in the black suit stood alone at the center, his figure small beneath the towering walls. Yet in that moment he seemed larger. The question hung in the air, a blade of suspense, cutting into every mind, and the answer had not yet come. The silence stretched long and heavy across the chamber as the alien judge's challenge hung in the air. The human stood in the circle of light with nothing but his empty hands, while all around him the alien leaders leaned forward eager to see him fall. Whispers rose and fell like waves against stone, voices sharp and cruel. They want to break him. They want to prove that humans without weapons are nothing, fragile creatures that do not belong among the stars. A sharp tone echoed through the vast hall as the judge struck the floor with his claw. The first trial will begin now. The alien voice carried power and menace. Let us see what your kind truly is. With a gesture, the doors at the side of the chamber slid open, and from the darkness emerged a beast unlike anything found on Earth. It was a creature bred for war, its body covered in armored scales, its fangs dripping with venom. Its four massive legs stomping on the ground as it roared. The sound shook the very walls. The gathered council members hissed and murmured with delight, for this beast had destroyed warriors far stronger than any human. The human diplomat did not flinch. He did not back away. He stepped forward into the center of the circle, his eyes locked on the beast that snarled and scraped its claws against the stone floor. Around the chamber the aliens mocked. Hear him breathe, they whispered. Hear his heart pound, he will break soon. Yet the man's breathing remained calm, his hands at his side, his gaze sharp and steady, as if he faced not a monster, but a puzzle to be solved. The beast lunged with terrifying speed, its claws slashing, its fangs snapping. The council cheered as death rushed forward, but the man moved, not with the strength of steel nor the speed of machines, but with the simple reflex of survival carved into his kind. He sidestepped, his body bending low, his hand grabbing a fragment of loose stone from the floor, nothing more than a shard. And with a swift motion he drove it into the soft flesh under the beast's jaw. The roar that followed was thunder and pain. The creature stumbled, rage in its eyes, black blood dripping across the stone. The aliens gasped. Some rose from their seats, their voices overlapping in disbelief. He used nothing but the floor itself. He turned stone into a blade. The whispers spread like fire. Could it be that the human was not as fragile as they believed? Yet the judge snarled, his mandibles grinding with fury. It is luck, he shouted. Nothing more. Let the trial continue. The beast rose again, its fury greater, its charge louder. But the man remained calm, his eyes sharp, his breath steady, every movement precise. The fight grew fierce, the beast charging again and again, its body a wall of muscle and teeth, but each time the man moved with instinct, his hands finding what little the chamber gave him. Dust in his palm flung into the creature's eyes, loose shards of broken stone turned into sharp points. Even the folds of his jacket wrapped around the beast's fangs to buy him a single heartbeat of time. The crowd of alien leaders watched in disbelief, each move showing them a truth they had never considered. In the hands of humans, even nothing becomes a weapon. The beast stumbled one final time, its body slamming into the stone wall, weakened and blind, its roar fading into a gurgle. The human stood over it, his face calm, though his chest rose and fell with effort. The shard of stone still in his grip, his other hand steady at his side. The beast gave one final twitch before falling silent. The chamber filled with silence again, the weight of it crushing. No one spoke, no one moved, until finally voices broke the stillness. Impossible, hissed one alien leader, his scaled body trembling with disbelief. He had nothing, yet he won. Another alien slammed a clawed hand against the railing. No, it was chance. The beast was weak. The test was unfair. More voices rose in protest, in disbelief, in anger. The council chamber had turned into a storm of words, all centered on the lone human standing quietly in the circle, his hands once again empty, his eyes raised toward the alien judge who glared down from above. The judge's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Silence, he roared, and the voices fell quiet. Though fury burned in their eyes, the alien leaned forward, his gaze sharp, his voice heavy with menace. You survived the first test, but survival is not strength. Survival is not power. We will break you in the next trial. His words rumbled across the chamber, filled with promise and threat. The human said nothing. He only looked back with eyes that did not waver, eyes that carried something. The council could not name, something that unsettled them. The judge raised his claw, his voice booming once again. Prepare the second trial. The chamber lights dimmed. The air grew colder. Shadows stretched long across the floor, and from the far side of the hall another door began to open, wider and darker than before. Whispers rose again, this time softer, less mocking, tinged with something the aliens did not want to admit, a trace of fear. They had seen the human turn nothing into victory once, and they wondered in silence what he would do next. The door opened fully, and from the darkness something stirred, something older, larger, and far more dangerous than the beast before. The council leaned closer, their eyes wide, their breath sharp, waiting to see how the human would face it, waiting to see if their fears or their hopes would be proven true. And at the center of the chamber, the man in the black suit stood tall, waiting for what was to come, his hands empty, his gaze steady, ready to turn nothing once again into the sharpest weapon the galaxy had ever seen. The chamber fell into silence once more as the second set of doors yawned open wide, and black air poured into the hall like smoke from an unseen fire. And the alien leaders leaned forward with eyes filled with hunger and fear as they whispered among themselves that this time the human would not walk away alive. From the shadows within came the sound of slow and heavy steps, each one shaking the stone floor like distant thunder, and with every step the temperature seemed to drop further, the walls themselves humming with an ancient power that pressed on every soul in the chamber, until even the alien leaders stopped whispering and simply stared. At last the creature emerged. It was not a beast of simple muscle and fong like the first test, but something far older and darker. Its body shimmered with strange black plates like shards of broken night. Its eyes glowed with a pale blue light that pierced the chamber like icy spears, and in its hands it carried no weapon for it. Was the weapon itself. Its very presence was a blade of terror. The alien judge rose high above the others, his voice like steel dragged across stone. Behold the sentinel of shadows, a creature older than your species, human. This being has torn apart armies with its bare claws. Let us see if you can turn nothing into something against it. The human diplomat did not move. He simply breathed slow and steady, his hands empty, his mind sharp. He knew every eye was fixed upon him, waiting for weakness, and still he did not flinch. Instead, he stepped forward, his shoes echoing against the floor, until he stood close enough to see the mist rising from the sentinel's body. The sentinel lunged with speed that defied its massive frame, its claws sweeping down with the strength of mountains. The aliens gasped in unison, certain the human would be crushed, but at the last moment the man dropped low, rolling across the floor, and rising again, with a shard of broken stone in his hand. The same floor that threatened to bury him had given him a weapon again. The sentinel roared, its voice like a storm in the deep void, shaking the chamber, and sending dust from the ceiling raining down. The human used the distraction. He flung the shard into one of the glowing eyes, and though the shard could not pierce the armored plates, it struck true, and the sentinel staggered back in fury, its roar splitting the chamber in two. The council chamber erupted in noise again, aliens shouting impossible, some yelling that it was luck again, others whispering in voices that trembled that perhaps the human was more than they believed. The judge silenced them with one wave of his claw, his eyes burning with hatred for the man who refused to die. The sentinel steadied itself, its claws spreading wide, its eyes glowing brighter as it began to move with even greater speed. It was no longer a beast, but a shadow flowing across the stone floor. The human's eyes tracked every movement, his breath calm. Even as sweat lined his brow, he waited, and then, as the shadow struck, he bent low again, pulling free the very chain that lined the barrier of the chamber. The chain, meant only as decoration now in his hands, became a whip. With one snap, he wrapped the chain around the sentinel's wrist, pulling with all his weight, and using the monster's momentum against it, the sentinel staggered forward, slamming into the wall, its roar of fury filling the chamber again. The human twisted the chain around its arm, tightening the hold using nothing but leverage and cunning. The aliens cried out louder, some slamming their hands against the railings, some whispering in disbelief. "He is using the walls, the floor, the very chains of the chamber itself." Another voice trembled. "This is what makes them dangerous. They need no weapons, for they make weapons of all things." The sentinel thrashed, tearing stone from the wall, but the human moved with the rhythm of survival again, his eyes sharp, his hands never still. He ripped the broken fragments of wall free, using them as shields against the claws and shards as blades against the thinner joints of the sentinel's armor again. And again, he turned the chamber itself into an armory. The sentinel staggered once more, its pale blue eyes dimming under the relentless assault, not because the human had strength greater than it, but because he had used every part of the world around him, every stone, every chain, every breath of air, until the creature of shadows faltered in confusion and pain. The judge's mandibles clicked with fury, his claws trembling against the railing as he shouted enough. Yet his voice was drowned in the roar of the chamber, for even those who had mocked humanity now leaned forward in all whispering words they had never thought possible. This human fights with nothing and wins. The sentinel collapsed to one knee, its claws scraping deep lines into the floor. The human stood before it, his chest heaving, his hands raw from stone and chain. Yet his eyes remained steady and sharp. He raised one hand, as if ready to strike again, but then he stopped, lowering it slowly. Instead, he let the sentinel collapse in exhaustion, the creature falling heavy and silent against the floor. The aliens froze, their whispers gone, now replaced with silence deep and heavy. The judge glared down, his eyes filled with rage and something else, something he would not name: fear. He raised his claw, once again his voice thundering across the hall. "Enough trials will continue, the third awaits." The chamber lights dimmed further. The walls seemed to close in shadows, creeping longer across the floor. As the third set of doors rumbled with the sound of grinding stone, the alien leaders leaned closer, their eyes wide, for even they did not know what test would come next. Only the judge and his closest allies held that secret. The human stood ready, his hands empty, once again his breath steady, his gaze never leaving the opening darkness as the doors continued to part wider and wider, until the air itself seemed to change cold and sharp like the edge of a blade. And then from the abyss beyond the doors a sound emerged, not a roar, not a growl, but something far worse, a sound that made even the oldest aliens shudder in their seats, for it was the sound of something they thought had been sealed away forever, something no living being should face. The human tightened his fists, his body still as stone, his eyes locked on the black void, waiting for what would step forth, and once again he prepared to turn nothing into the deadliest weapon of all. The chamber trembled as the third doors opened wider and wider, each inch dragging across the floor like the sound of mountains grinding together, and with every moment that passed the silence in the council deepened, until even the smallest breath seemed too loud to risk, for the air that poured through the opening was not air at all, but something thicker, darker, and filled with weight, like invisible chains wrapping around the chest of every being inside. The alien leaders gripped their seats, their voices hushed, as whispers of ancient warnings filled their minds. Some spoke of a beast, others of force too wild to tame, and some refused to speak at all, covering their eyes, as if even sight might bring curse. The judge, however, stood, tall, his claw raised high, his voice echoing with false strength. "Behold, human, the forgotten trial, the force. No being has conquered, for it cannot be slain, cannot be broken, cannot be bound. Let us see how you fight against what cannot be fought." From the endless dark a shape began to take form, at first only a shifting shimmer, as if the shadows themselves gathered. and rose. Then a pulse of energy spread across the hall, making the floor crack, and the walls groan. The form grew taller, broader, until it was a tower of moving void. Its body, without flesh or bone, without eyes or mouth, yet radiating fear itself. Every living creature felt its instincts scream, flee, but there was no place to flee. The human diplomat stood firm, his chest rising and falling, his eyes locked on the shape. Though sweat rolled from his brow, the whispers of the aliens echoed around him. He cannot fight this. Nothing can fight this. No weapon can wound it. No wall can cage it. But the man only raised his hands, empty as before, ready to turn even emptiness into something. The shadow surged forward, not with claws or teeth, but with pure force, the air itself slamming into the human like a tidal wave. He staggered back, his feet grinding against the stone, his body bending, but not falling. He spread his stance, drawing strength from the floor itself, each step sliding, until at last he caught balance again. He looked around the chamber, his mind racing, every detail flashing before his eyes. The cracks in the floor, the fallen chains, the shards of stone, the pillars rising to the ceiling. The air was alive with pressure, yet he saw patterns in it, waves of unseen rhythm, like the breath of a beast, though no beast lived before him. He moved with sudden purpose, dodging left as another wave of force struck the ground, exploding stone upward. He caught one shard with both hands, spinning with its weight and flinging it into the heart of the shadow. Though it passed through the void, it carried momentum and made the void ripple, as if it had form beneath its nothingness. The aliens gasped louder, some rising from their seats in disbelief. He found a way to touch it, they cried. He turned nothing into weight against nothing. The shadow roared, not with sound, but with the shattering of light, the chamber's fires dimming until all burned blue. The human squinted against the glow, his body trembling, but his mind clear. He sprinted now, weaving through each wave of crushing force, grabbing shards, chains, and even the broken railing, bending them with sudden bursts of strength and speed, until he carried a storm of makeshift weapons in his hands. He hurled them one after another, not to pierce, but to disturb, to disrupt, to force the void to reveal its hidden rhythm. Each strike rippled the shadow, its body shuddering with cracks of blue light, as though energy caged inside was fighting to break free. The judge slammed his claws against the railing, his voice filled with anger. It cannot be harmed. Human, stop this foolishness. Yet his eyes betrayed fear, for even he had never seen the forgotten trial stagger. The human pressed harder, his steps unyielding, his hands tearing free more weapons from the chamber itself, the very hall, becoming an arsenal in his grasp. Chains, snapping pillars, cracking stones, splitting under his will, and with each strike the shadow rippled further, its body no longer silent, but thrumming like a broken drum, each beat louder, each pulse more unstable. The alien leaders clung to their seats, their voices turning from doubt to terror. He is breaking it, whispered one. He is unraveling the trial. Another gasped. This is not supposed to happen. The human raised both arms, high chains coiled around his fists like serpents, glowing faintly with the energy of the shadow. He had captured its force against itself. He slammed them down into the floor, the sound like thunder, the chains whiplashing forward, striking the void square at its heart. The ripple became a fracture, the shadow's form splitting wide to reveal within not endless emptiness, but a core of blinding, lightest sphere of energy contained only by its prison of dark. The council screamed in horror. Even the judge stumbled back, for they knew that core was not meant to be freed. It was the remnant of a weapon from before history itself, a fragment of destruction that once burned entire worlds, and it was awakening under human hands. The human did not step back. He moved forward, his eyes steady though the glow burned his skin, though the air scorched his breath. He reached out both hands and seized the energy itself, gripping it. As though it were solid, his body shuddered with the pain, his veins glowing with the force of stars, yet still he held on. The chamber shook, cracks racing across every wall, dust falling like rain from the ceiling. The aliens cried, "He will destroy us all." But the man's voice cut through the storm for the first time. He spoke calm, and lo, every weapon has a hand to wield it, and now this one is mine. The light pulsed brighter, the shadow shattered with a final scream of silence, its body collapsing inward, leaving only the human, holding the glowing sphere, his body framed in fire, and dust, his suit torn, his skin burned, yet his stance unbroken. The council fell into silence. None dared to move, none dared to breathe. The judge's eyes burned with fury and fear, his voice trembling though he tried to hide it. You cannot control the human, it will consume you. But the human raised the sphere higher, the light shining across every corner of the hall, his voice unshaken perhaps. But until then it serves me. The chamber froze in awe, every alien staring at the man who held destruction itself, as if it were a tool, a weapon, made from nothing, a weapon only a human could dare to claim. And then the sphere pulsed once more, brighter and sharper than before, shaking the chamber again, the ceiling groaning as cracks split wider, threatening to collapse the hall upon all inside. The cliffhanger arrived in silence, as the human's eyes narrowed, his hands tightening around the sphere of living light, his voice calm, as he whispered though none could hear what came next. The hall shook with a roar that was not sound, but force itself, ripping through every stone and every pillar as the sphere of light pulsed in the human's hands, its glow rising brighter than suns. The alien council shielded their eyes, yet no shield could hide the truth. Before them, a human stood, gripping pure destruction, as if it were no more than a tool. The judge stumbled back, his claws scraping across the railing, his voice loud, but trembling. Release, a human, release it now, before it consumes us all. Yet the man stood, unmoving, his figure outlined by the blazing light, his hands steady though the fire burned through flesh and bone, veins glowing, as if rivers of flame now flowed inside him. The alien leaders whispered frantically, their voices overlapping. He cannot survive this, no body can endure it, his cells will tear apart. Yet still he stands, look at him, look, he bends it, he bends the flame. The human diplomat breathed slowly, each inhale deep, each exhale calm, though his chest rose and fell as though under crushing weight. He closed his eyes, letting the energy surge through him, his mind racing like a storm, his thoughts not of fear, but of focus. If this is a weapon, then I will master it. If it is a curse, then I will bend the curse itself until it serves me. The sphere pulsed again, shaking the chamber, dust falling like rain, cracks spreading wider along the ceiling. But the man did not stumble. He moved forward step by step, the floor beneath his feet scorched by the heat of the sphere, yet every step firm like iron, pressing forward toward the council itself. The judge raised his hand, his command echoing through the air. Guards, seize him, seize the human before it is too late. Yet no guard moved, for every soldier knew the truth. They had seen weapons of fire, they had seen storms of plasma, they had seen blades of light, but never had they seen one bare hand hold the source itself and still walk. The human raised the sphere higher, its light bending across the chamber, filling every corner with fire. Shadows burned away as though none had ever existed. He looked upon the council, his voice calm and steady, though the weight of it pressed against every alien heart. You asked what humans are without weapons, and now I show you we are the hands that turn even nothing into power. We are the will that shapes destruction itself into a tool. The aliens recoiled, some covering their faces, others turning away. But the judge refused to yield, his eyes blazing with rage. You will kill us all, you fool. The energy cannot be bound, it cannot be held. It is older than every world. Here will burn through you and then through us all. The human's lips curled into a faint, grim smile. Then perhaps it will learn to burn under human command. He whispered, his words sharp as blades, his tones steady as steel. The sphere began to twist, light bending, as though the very fabric of reality strained to hold it, its pulse beating faster, stronger each second. Yet instead of breaking, the human tightened his grip, forcing it smaller, compressing its glow, forcing the wild chaos into order. The hall thundered with its resistance, the stone shaking like a beast thrashing, yet the man would not release his grip. Alien leaders screamed in disbelief. Some rose from their seats, others fell to their knees. He is bending it, bending the unbendable, impossible, cried one. No mind, no hand has ever done this, yet he does. The judge slammed his claws against the railing, his anger turning to something darker, fear. You cannot hold a human, it will turn against you. The human opened his eyes, once more their glow reflecting the sphere's fire, his voice rising strong. Then it will know what it means to fight a human, for we never yield, not to blade, not to fire, not to void. The sphere screamed, its energy surging outward in a burst of raw flame, the shockwave, hurling debris across the chamber pillars, snapping guards tumbling like leaves. Yet in the heart of the storm, the man still stood, chains of light, now curling around his arms, his body glowing as though he himself had become part of the sphere. He raised one arm high, then brought it down into the floor, the chains slamming with force so great the stone exploded outward, the shockwave rising in waves. Yet he controlled it, shaping the blast, bending the fire like a whip, guiding it around the council seats, so that not one alien was touched by the fury, though they felt its heat scorch their skin. Gasps of horror and awe filled the chamber. He is not destroying, he is aiming it, cried one. He shapes it, cried another. His hands wield fire like a blade. The judge trembled, now, his voice lower, yet fierce enough. You are no diplomat, human. You are a threat to every world. If you can bend fire itself, what will stop you from burning the stars? The human turned his gaze upon the judge, his eyes glowing brighter than flame, his voice quiet but sharp. Nothing stops a human but choice, and it is choice that shapes our hands. For a moment, silence held the chamber, as every alien felt the truth of those words. Choice, not instinct, not chains, not ancient rules, but the choice of one man holding fire itself. But before the weight of silence could settle, the sphere in his hands pulsed again, this time sharper, its energy rising beyond control, the glow flaring into a storm that threatened to tear through the walls, the ceiling, the very world itself. The human clenched his teeth, his body straining as cracks of light spread across his arms, his chest, his skin splitting from the force. The council screamed, release it, or we all die. Yet the man shook his head, his voice harsh and unbroken. Not yet, I can hold it, I must hold it. The judge stepped forward, his claws trembling, his face caught between fury and terror. Human, you are already breaking, you cannot win against it. But the man only tightened his grip, his voice steady, even as his body burned. Then, let it break me before it breaks this chamber, for I will not let go, not until it bends, not until it serves. The sphere shrieked, light splitting the air like torn fabric, every flame within it bursting outward, yet still contained by his hands. The hall itself began to collapse, stone falling in fragments, chains rattling, walls tearing, the fire within him now visible in every breath. And then, with a final surge, the sphere exploded into pure radiance, swallowing everything in light, drowning sound and silence alike, leaving nothing but fire and one human voice echoing through the blaze. The explosion came like the birth of a star, swallowing the chamber in fire and radiance. The walls turned to ash, the pillars shattered into nothing, and for a moment every alien believed they were dead. But then, through the flood of light, a figure still stood, a shadow against the blaze. The human diplomat was there, his body torn by cracks of glowing fire, his skin glowing like molten stone, veins of light pulsing within him, his hands trembling, yet still gripping chains of pure energy that twisted around him like living serpents. He should have fallen, yet he did not. He should have burned, yet he endured. Gasps rose from the council, their voices trembling in disbelief. He lives, no one survives such force, no body, no mind can carry that weight. Yet he stands, look at him, look. The alien judge staggered back, his claws shaking against the railing, fury and fear mingling in his eyes. This is no longer survival. This is defiance itself. He is not bending the fire, he is becoming it. The human lifted his head, his eyes no longer eyes, but twin orbs of blazing light. His voice echoed through the chamber, not loud, but heavy, every word carrying the weight of storms. You called me weaponless and powerless, yet here I stand bearing the fire itself, and it bends to me, it bends, because I will it to bend. The fire chains writhed around him, bursting outward like whips cracking against the air, smashing fragments of shattered stone into dust, yet they never touched the council, though each member felt the heat blistering their skin. The fire obeyed his command, yet raged at his restraint like a beast furious to be caged. The council leader nearest to him whispered broken words, impossible, impossible, no flesh survives this, no will commands it. The judge raised his voice, though it quivered, you are cursed human, you will burn yourself, until nothing is left. You cannot win against the fire, it will claim you, as it claims all. The human's body shuddered, his arms quaking as cracks spread deeper into his chest, glowing brighter each second. Yet his voice did not break. We are human. We do not wait for mercy. We seize fire itself. We turn it into what we choose. His steps echoed as he moved forward, each footfall shaking the scorched floor, the chains of fire trailing behind him like a burning cloak, his presence pressing upon the council, until even the fiercest among them bent under its weight. The aliens tried to rise, some even fled toward the shattered doors, but the chains lashed across the floor not to strike them, but to bar their path. The man's voice steady remained. None leaves until the choice is made. They froze, unable to resist, unable to escape, their eyes fixed on him in terror and awe, the man who wielded fire barehanded. The sphere within his grasp, now no longer a wild storm, but a burning sun, compressed, smaller, brighter, heavier, each second the strain, tearing at him, every breath a battle, his body screaming to collapse, yet his spirit refusing to surrender. The alien judge hissed, his voice sharp. Human, you are not proof of strength, you are proof of madness. No race can stand beside one who holds death in his hands. The human turned his blazing gaze upon the judge, his voice lower, but sharper than any blade. Then perhaps you begin to understand. To us, everything becomes a weapon, even pain, even fear, even death itself. The council chamber shook again, fragments falling like rain, the entire structure straining against the weight of the energy within him. He could not hold it forever. Even his will had limits. His body cracked, further glowing fissures spreading like rivers of fire across his flesh. Yet still he stood, still he fought. The council leaders whispered in fear, their voices trembling. If he loses control, we all die. The chamber will not hold the city, will burn, the planet will fall. But the human lifted the sphere higher, his voice rising above their panic. You asked what we are, without weapons. Now you see, we are the weapon, we are the will that turns nothing into force, and we will never yield. For a moment silence returned, broken only by the hum of fire contained by his grip. Then the sphere pulsed violently, once more surging against him, bursting with light the chains around his body, shattering like glass fragments of fire, tearing through the hall. The aliens screamed, covering their faces, some falling to the ground. Yet through the storm a man still stood, gripping tighter, though his arms burned away into light, his voice breaking through the roar. I will not release it, not while I stand, not while you doubt what we are. The fire bent, it twisted around him, pulling tighter, shaping itself to his will. Though it fought, though it screamed, though it tried to devour him, still he forced it smaller, brighter, sharper, until it was no longer a sphere, but a blade, a sword of living flame, clenched in his hand. The chamber shook as he raised it high, the sword blazing brighter than suns, its light reflecting across the faces of every alien, their eyes wide with terror and wonder. The human spoke, his voice no longer voice, but fire itself. You wanted proof, here is proof. You wanted truth, here is truth. In the hands of humans, even nothing becomes a weapon. The aliens trembled, none dared speak, none dared move, every heart hammered with the weight of what they now saw. One man holding the fire of creation itself, forged into a weapon by nothing more than will. The human stepped forward, raising the blazing blade, its fire humming with power, the chains wrapping once more around his arms, his voice cutting through the silence. This is the strength you feared, this is the reason you sought to break us, and still we rise, still we endure. The judge fell back, stumbling over his seat, his voice cracked in fury. In dread you will doom us all, you will destroy everything. The human lowered the blade, its fire blazing at the ground before him, scorching a line across the floor, yet sparing every alien, his voice quiet, but deadly clear. No, I will not destroy, but I will show you that humanity cannot be chained. The fire blade pulsed again, its glow spreading wider, filling the chamber, spilling into the sky beyond the shattered ceiling until the whole world saw the light. And then the human staggered, his body failing, his grip loosening, the sword trembling as if it sought freedom. Once more his voice breaking yet unyielding. I will hold until the last breath, but know this, if I fall the fire will not die, it will remain in every human hand. The sword flared brighter and brighter until no eye could look upon it.